Strauss & Company is proud to present two exceptional works by well-known South African artist Penny Siopis. The one on my left is particularly important because comparable works you would only find in major museums in South Africa, such as Melancholia in the Johannesburg Art Gallery and Still Life with Watermelon and Other Things in the Rupert Museum in Stellenbosch. These works are also very rare and they form part of her middle period of the 1980s. Some people who are familiar with her work will recall her earlier still lifes with foreshortened tables and sparsely placed confectionery on those tables. And in this particular work, she goes completely the opposite direction, filling vast spaces of dining rooms, dining halls, and artist studios, and cluttered the tables full of objects, flowers, confectionery, and other symbols used in some of her paintings. Now, she took up a position at the art department at the University of the Witwatersrand in 1984, and she used some of her students to pose in this particular work. So you would see the hand on the right, there is the profile further back in the middle ground. You have a nude stretched out on the floor. Some people might say that is a self-portrait. And further back, you have another figure with a basket of fruit. So this is clearly the interior of an artist. Look, for instance, on the massive canvases on the left-hand side. And it's also interesting to know the internal dynamics of this particular work, because look closely at the figure on the right. The model is holding a hare, a rabbit in her hand, and when you look at the painting on the left, you will see that there the rabbit is dead. So Siopis is clearly playing with our sense of perspective, and she's commenting on the nature of a representation that is the quest of artists for centuries. On the table in front, you have references to her famous cake paintings of the early 1980s. You have objects from her studio, such as the tortoiseshell, for instance. And she was interested, in this particular period, she was interested in the famous 17th century Dutch still life painting tradition, as well as history paintings as well. And so you have typically the vanitas symbols, such as the skeleton in the foreground, as well as the porcupine quills that is dotted around there as well, and also the heart, the real heart that you see on the table as well. And she's also fond of framing these works with very elaborate drapes that she embellished with all sorts of trimming and tassel and other textile to give us a sense of, if you like, the excesses of this particular period. You have to remember that this was the late stages of apartheid, and I think in a manner it was also Siopis' comment on the iniquities of the apartheid system, the excessive nature of the good life of those politicians. The work to my right is an example of a history period where she drew on representations of the Cape, especially cartography, the maps of the Cape Peninsula, and the manner in which she went about creating this work is quite interesting. She asked her late partner, the famous art history professor Colin Richards, to draw maps of the Cape on her backs. And this whole process would be documented in video work as well as in photographs. And what you see there is one of her analytical self-portraits with her filling the foreground with her back turned to us. And look carefully and you will see the outline of Table Mountain, which you can also see in the background. in a manner typical of Dutch 17th century history paintings. She also frames this particular work in a very elaborate way, and it is almost as if she uses 18th century frontispieces that you would often find in publications of the time, and she frames the whole picture with yet another reference. And it's interesting to note all the allegorical figures on the far corners of this particular work. Now, the other interesting thing about this work is the manner in which it was created. It is clearly a pastel work, but how she went about it was that after each application of the pastel, she would fix it, and then she would sand it down with very fine sandpaper and apply another layer of pastel as well. And in that manner, she created quite a phenomenal sense of the fragile skin of this model with the elaborate map tattooed on her back. The same goes for the wonderful rippling water that you see in this phenomenal work.